Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be the only awake person in a world that is fast asleep? Imagine standing in the middle of a bustling, sophisticated city, screaming at the top of your lungs that a disaster is coming, that the ground beneath their feet is about to collapse, but every single face you look into responds with a smile of mockery, a sneer of arrogance, or a stone thrown in anger. Now imagine doing that not for a day, not for a year, but for 950 years. This is not just a story about a flood. This is not just a story about a boat and animals. This is the terrifying and beautiful saga of a man who carried the weight of humanity's survival on his tired shoulders. This is the unknown mystery of Noah's Ark, a narrative of warnings ignored and a disaster that reshaped the entire earth. Welcome to Divine Sagas, where we dust off the pages of history to find the mirror of our own souls. Today, we step into the shoes of Nuh, peace be upon him, to witness the greatest reset human history has ever known. To understand the magnitude of this disaster, we must first understand the world that deserved it. We often picture the people of Noah as primitive cavemen, but historical and Islamic insights suggest something far more dangerous. They were a civilization of immense power, longevity, and physical strength. They lived for centuries. They were the descendants of Seth and Idris, people who once knew the truth of Allah, but had allowed time to erode their faith. It didn't start with devil worship. It started with love. They loved their righteous ancestors, Wad, Suwa, Yahuth, Ya'uk, and Nasir. When these pious men died, the people grieved. Satan, the eternal enemy, whispered a subtle deception. Build statues of them, simply to remember their piety, to inspire you to be good. It seemed innocent. It seemed like a tribute to faith. But as one generation died and another was born, the purpose was forgotten. The statues of remembrance became idols of worship. By the time Nuh was chosen, the world was drowning in shirk, polytheism, long before it drowned in water. Into this darkness, Allah sent a beacon of light. Nuh was not a king with an army. He was a man with a message. The Quran describes his plea with heartbreaking clarity. He said, "O my people, worship Allah. You have no other deity but Him. Indeed, I fear for you the punishment of a tremendous day." But consider the reaction. They didn't just ignore him. They launched a campaign of psychological warfare. The elites, the chiefs of his people, looked at his followers, the poor, the weak, the destitute, and they laughed. They said, "We see you as nothing but a human being like us, and we see that those who follow you are the lowest of us." It was a class war masked as religious skepticism. They equated truth with wealth and righteousness with status. Does that sound familiar? In our modern world, do we not judge the validity of a message by the net worth of the messenger? For 9.5 centuries, Nuh persevered. This is a number that our modern minds can barely comprehend. 950 years of rejection. He tried every method. He spoke to them in public squares. He whispered to them in secret gatherings. He appealed to their logic, pointing to the moon, the sun, the creation of their own bodies. He appealed to their hearts, reminding them of Allah's mercy. He warned them of the punishment. And what was the result? They put their fingers in their ears and covered their heads with their garments. It was total, willful blindness. It got so bad that fathers would take their young sons to see the old man Nuh, pointing at him and saying, "When I die, you must continue to hate this man. Never listen to him. He is a liar." Hatred was their inheritance. The message of Islam, of submission to the one Creator, became the most hated thing in their society. There comes a moment in the history of nations when the door of opportunity slams shut. We often think of Allah's mercy as endless, and it is, but His justice is also absolute. There is a point of no return. Nuh, exhausted and heartbroken, finally raised his hands to the sky. He did not ask for a castle. He did not ask for gold. He made a prayer that would seal the fate of the earth. He said, "My Lord, do not leave upon the earth from among the disbelievers a single inhabitant." This was not an act of vengeance. It was an act of divine necessity. He realized that the corruption was genetic, cultural, and absolute. If they survived, they would only breed more darkness. The decision was made in the heavens. The timer had started. But the punishment was not immediate. It required preparation. It required a test of faith so absurd, so illogical to the human eye that only the truest believers could pass it. Allah commanded Nuh to build a ship. But not just any ship. He was to build a titanic vessel in the middle of a landlocked desert, far from any sea or river. Imagine the optics of this. A man who has been preaching about an unseen God for centuries is now building a titanic vessel on dry sand. He had to plant the trees first. He had to wait for the wood to grow. Years passed in silence. The preaching had stopped. Now there was only the sound of the saw and the hammer. Every time the chiefs of his people passed by, they mocked him. "Oh, Nuh," they would jeer, "you used to be a prophet. Have you now become a carpenter? Where is the water, old man? Is the ship going to sail on the sand?" They laughed. They made jokes. They treated the construction site as a garbage dump. But Nuh's response was chilling in its calmness. He told them, "If you ridicule us, then we will ridicule you just as you ridicule us. And you are going to know who will receive a punishment that will disgrace him." This brings us to a reflective question. Would you have the courage to build your ark when the rest of the world calls you insane? When the society around you normalizes evil and calls truth a mental illness, do you have the strength to keep hammering the nails of your faith? The story of the ark is the ultimate lesson in conviction. It teaches us that truth does not depend on public opinion. Nuh was building his salvation while the world was busy preparing its own grave. The construction of the ark was a physical manifestation of Tawheed, the oneness of God. It was built under the eyes of Allah, according to divine specifications. It wasn't just a boat, it was a sanctuary. Finally, the signs began to appear. The command was given. The oven, the tanur, gushed forth water. Scholars interpret this in various ways. Some say it was a literal oven in Nuh's house. Others say it was the surface of the earth boiling over. But water coming from a place of fire was the signal. It was time. The animals began to arrive. This was not Nuh herding them. This was a divine compulsion. From every pair, 2 were chosen. The believers, very few in number after 950 years, some narrations say only about 80 people, boarded the ship. The atmosphere was thick with tension. The sky turned a color no one had ever seen. The wind carried the scent of death. Then the heavens broke. The Quran describes the event with terrifying imagery. The gates of the sky were opened with water pouring down in torrents, and the earth burst forth with springs. It wasn't just rain, it was a collapse of the atmosphere. The waters of the sky met the waters of the earth. The level rose with terrifying speed. The skeptics, the mockers, the elites who thought their wealth would save them suddenly realized that gold does not float. Panic ensued. People ran to the high grounds, but the water chased them. The ark, massive and sturdy, began to lift. It floated through waves as high as mountains. Inside, the believers were safe, protected not just by wood and nails, but by the promise of Allah. Outside, it was the apocalypse. But amidst this global catastrophe, the Quran zooms in on a single, heartbreaking conversation. This is perhaps the most emotional moment in the entire story. Nuh, safe on the ark, looked out into the chaotic waves and saw his own son. This was his flesh and blood. This was the boy he had raised. The fatherly instinct, the overwhelming love surged in his heart. He called out through the roar of the wind, "O my son, come aboard with us and be not with the disbelievers." Can you hear the desperation in his voice? It wasn't a prophet speaking to a rebel. It was a father begging his child to live. But the son's arrogance was stronger than the storm. Even in the face of death, he refused to submit. He shouted back, "I will take refuge on a mountain to protect me from the water." He relied on the material world. He relied on geology, on height, on nature. He thought the laws of physics would save him from the creator of physics. Nuh pleaded one last time, "There is no protector today from the decree of Allah except for whom he gives mercy." And then the verse says, "And the waves came between them, and he was among the drowned." Pause for a moment and let that sink in. The son of a prophet, a direct descendant of the man who spoke to Allah, was not saved. This is a terrifying warning for all of us. Lineage does not guarantee paradise. Having a pious father, a religious mother, or a scholarly grandfather will not save you if your own heart is arrogant. The wave that separated Nuh from his son is the same wave that separates truth from falsehood today. It was a physical and spiritual separation. Nuh's heart shattered, but he had to submit to the reality that blood ties end where faith begins. The flood cleansed the earth. It was a total wash. The history of humanity was rebooted. The silence after the storm must have been deafening. No more mockery, no more idols, no more corruption, just the sound of water and the breathing of the few believers on the ark. The command came from Allah. "O earth, swallow your water, and O sky, withhold your rain." The water subsided. The ark came to rest on Mount Judy. Nuh disembarked into a new world, a world purified of sin, a blank canvas given to humanity for a second chance. But here is where the story turns into a mirror for us, the audience living in the USA, in Europe, in the modern world. We are not building a wooden ship, but we are living in a time that mirrors the era of Nuh. We see the same arrogance, the same denial of the divine, the same mockery of those who hold on to faith. We see corruption celebrated and purity shamed. We are drowning in a flood of materialism, distraction, and spiritual emptiness. The waves of doubt are as high as mountains, threatening to sweep away our families and our children. So where is your ark? The Prophet Muhammad said, "The likeness of my al-bayt, my family, and by extension his sunnah and guidance, is that of the Ark of Noah. Whoever rides it is saved, and whoever stays behind is drowned." Your ark is your prayer. Your ark is the Quran. Your ark is the company of the righteous. In a world that tells you to climb the mountain of career, fame, and ego for safety, you must choose to step into the wooden boat of humility and servitude to Allah. The story of the Great Flood is not just history, it is prophecy. It reminds us that Allah's patience is vast, but His time is fixed. It teaches us that being in the majority is not a sign of truth. Remember, only a handful boarded the ship while millions drowned. It teaches us that safety is found only in obedience to the divine command, even when it looks foolish to the rest of the world. As we conclude this journey on Divine Sagas, ask yourself, if the rain started falling today, if the skies split open right now, would you be inside the ark, or would you be running towards a mountain that cannot save you? The wood is available. The nails are in your hands. The time to build your faith is now, before the clouds gather. We hope this story has shaken the dust off your heart and planted a seed of hope and fear. This is the balance of a believer, walking between the fear of his punishment and the hope of his mercy. If this story touched your soul, if it made you reflect on your own journey, then our purpose is fulfilled. Don't let this feeling fade the moment the video ends. Carry the spirit of Nuh's patience and unwavering trust into your daily life. Thank you for watching Divine Sagas. We bring these stories not just to entertain, but to awaken. Until next time, keep building your ark, for the promise of Allah is true. Peace be upon you.